Thank you. It's Chris Glenn from the Federation of Small Businesses. We represent over 9,000 businesses in the Leeds City region. But I think currently small businesses feel a bit disenfranchised and don't feel their views have been taken into account when it comes to transport within the region. When we look at the local transport plan, there was no consultation whatsoever with small businesses when this 5-year plan was put together. And there's a feeling generally that this is something for the big businesses, and we're getting another mini RDA with the Leeds City region, that it's only really concentrating on big businesses. What do you say about that?
I'm not sure whether members of the panel, if you want to have a go, I can honestly say that certainly the officers of the council that consult have been out to various businesses, and I think certainly on the LEP, which is where I'm deputy chair, I know that the small and medium businesses are represented on all the issues across the board. But if you haven't been consulted, I think it's something that we have to take up. So I accept that. I don't know whether anybody on the panel.
Well, I just want to go back to this point about where do you start to solve the transport problem, and you start with the economy and the real problems you're trying to tackle. And clearly, the small business sector is a massive part of the local economy and where growth is going to come from. Yeah. So if you, I mean, you say consultation, yeah, fine. But if you're going to succeed in this city region, you're going to have to be part of driving the solution. If you call that consultation, fine. I'd say it's providing the evidence base and part of actually getting involved in the decision making on what the right priorities are. So yeah, good point.
Okay, I'm happy to talk to you after, yeah. Sorry, our colleague there, yeah. Councillor McLean, yeah.
Thank you very much. My name is Don Mackenzie. I'm leader of Harrogate Borough Council. I wonder whether I can get some encouragement from the panellists. We are currently, Harrogate Borough Council and I personally, giving strong backing to a bid by the Harrogate Chamber of Trade and Commerce, whose Chief Executive, Brian Dunsby, is sitting to my left, to upgrade the railway connections between Leeds, Harrogate and York. Those of you who've travelled on that line before will know that we have to rely upon very old cascaded diesel stock on a very poor infrastructured line. And we are seeking through this bid by the Chamber to, and using McNulty, who gave us great encouragement, to seek a local solution, a very good value for money solution by purchasing second-hand, although still very modern, London Underground stock, and to electrify the line. McNulty gives us encouragement. It would include also, of course, in our plans, a connection to Leeds Bradford Airport. And I wonder whether the panellists could give us some encouragement that by going to people like the DFT and using political backup, which we have with our local MP, Andrew Jones, we can achieve success with this bid.
John, that's a bid. That's a bid for you.
Have I been set up or what?
I'm sure.
I think the key thing is that you are thinking out of the box about different ways of, potentially with lower cost, of meeting the identified need. And that's an example of what the sub-region is going to have to do more of. And I know from colleagues that the discussion has started with the relevant experts in the department about the costs of doing this and how suitable the transferred stock would be for the route. So you need to press on with those discussions and do as much as you can to provide evidence to support them. But the principle of not just, well, we need this perfect solution at this huge, enormous cost, please provide it, government, but actually thinking about, well, we're not going to get that, but we might get something else. I mean, that's to be applauded.
Okay, Jim?
Yeah, I mean, I read about it and I thought this is a fantastic idea because most people sort of squirm at the idea of, oh, well, I'll have a hand-me-down train. But the truth is an electric train will last forever. I mean, you just rewind the motors, refurbish it. It's great, it's a new train. Nobody knows the difference. I've done countless market research exercises, a refurbished train. Oh, well, I didn't know, I thought it was a new train. So, I mean, if you do that and pull it off, fantastic, because I take it what you want is higher frequency, more reliable, a bit more capacity for the peak hour into both Leeds and York. Well, that's what Harrogate wants, so you've defined it and you've got an answer. Quite honestly, with best respect to John's colleagues, I don't see really what the department's going to do with it. I think you should be talking to Network Rail and saying, come on, support us in doing this, because this will reflect well on you. Let's form a partnership and get on with it.
Hello, sorry. It's always nice to know that you can put the two words together of woman and useful, so it's a nice introduction. On a serious topic, I represent 120 acres of greenbelt land, 3 miles from Leeds city centre on the Leeds Inner Ring Road. And everybody who's sitting here today, talking at the moment and addressing questions to you about transport, also have the same problem that I have and Nick Milner has, is that none of us here can do anything without the planners and planning permission for what we want to do. And the coalition government have now put planning as a debate, or they're moving it away from central government and out into the regions. And you can have any line from Harrogate to Leeds or to York, or inner city transport from Bradford to Leeds to the airport, or Nick for his traffic, to try and get his manufacturing through. And until we are given permission by the planners to do what we want to do, we are all have our hands and feet tied to move anything forward, not just for Leeds, but for the country as a whole. And I just wonder what priority transport has over planning and what order boxes are ticked in when any large scheme goes ahead as to what is the priority. Is planning the priority? Is transport? Is jobs? What sort of order do things come in?
Okay. I think we've got the gist of that question.
Yeah. Perhaps if I have a first go.
Yeah.
I think two things here. I mean, one thing for any poor benighted planners who may have crept into this audience and are feeling rather bruised, which won't be a new experience for them, that the planning system does have a purpose, which is to bring together conflicting interests, sometimes property interests, local community interests, together with the very legitimate interests of the scheme concerned, the developer, to try and reconcile, arbitrate between those. And I do sometimes feel in lots of debates about planning, there's just a forgetting that there's another side to the argument. And that there is no easy way to resolve 2, 3, 4 different arguments. And the planning system does struggle manfully to do that. Mustn't forget that. The incoming government, however, has got a very clear view, no doubt listening to concerns such as the ones you've expressed, that the planning system does need to be rebalanced. And you'll all have picked up from your newspapers the current consultation on new streamlined planning guidance for England, which is currently underway. Two things are worth highlighting. One thing that tries to do, again, it's a bit like my comments earlier about devolution. Many governments of all colours have tried, but this government is giving an extra go to streamline the amount of bump associated with planning. I think it's reducing 1,000 pages to
52.
50. You've counted?
Yes.
Right. I think that includes the glossary, actually. So that's delivering on the simplification agenda. The other thing they're doing, which is more contested, I think the National Trust in particular have been very prominent, is to put a presumption in favour of sustainable development. Now, clearly the 52 pages does describe what sustainable means. It sets out all the factors that have to be taken into account. But there is a very strong push that if development satisfies those, it should proceed. And that if local authorities have not got plans in place, then there should be an even greater presumption the development should proceed. So I think that is responding to the sorts of concerns you and no doubt others in the audience will have.
Okay, everyone's got a view of planning and planners. So I'm going to ask the other members of the panel to give their views and their Jim. This isn't anti-planning yet, Jim, but it is a good question at this particular moment, given the draft policy that's about.
It is. I would say this, though. You mentioned the inner ring road, which is part of, I think, the current pitch for funding and the old bid for money. And I just tend to think it emphasizes, this is a maintenance need, because if the money isn't spent on maintaining it, that road's going to get closed in 5 years' time, as I understand it. And it just brings to my mind how critical these bits of infrastructure are to a city economy. And you guys will know better than I will do what will happen to Leeds if that road were closed for an extended period. No, I don't think I want to add really to John's comments. I think we're all kind of keen to see how this debate is going to play out. Presumption in favour of development, fantastic. Personally, I think that the move away from a presumption of developing, in effect, in urban areas first is a mistake. I think there should be that presumption built into our planning system. It was there and it's coming out. And so that's my personal quibble with that.
Well, I think the lady's question, same thing cropped up. I was talking at a conference in Inverness 2 weeks ago, and you could have the same in Exeter, so it's clearly not something that's unique to here. I think you asked the question, is the priority transport or planning? I think of it differently. Planning to me is an enabler and a catalyst for change, and I think the sustainable economic growth agenda is where the priority is. Now, how that mixes is going to vary, depending on where you are and what the priorities are and the geography. I think the key thing is that decision-making is faster, and that's clearly a challenge, and perhaps the way the legislation's going to change and the guidance will help that. And I think secondly, and I don't live here, so I can only relate to my own experience in my home patch, but I did chair the business assembly there for 3 years, is that the devolution of decision-making probably is going to help that. And I think certainly in Scotland, trying to move away from the ability to appeal and appeal and appeal to a higher level, whether people like it or not, I think that's quite important. And so I think if the way government is seeing things evolve in the UK and in England in particular is very much about devolving decision-making and getting more local thinking. With that comes responsibility, which is good, in my opinion, and it should result in faster decision-making as well.
Well, we very much welcome the reforms that are being proposed right now. I don't think they're perfect. There are issues, and those have been identified in the discussion before. But I think when it comes to transport and the investment that's required and lining up the business cases for those things and setting the economic value of doing them, is we need a system which is significantly faster than it is now. Even if the answer is no, ultimately for businesses, it's far better to get there sooner rather than later. And because the costs in time and effort and an adjustment critically of strategy that follows from a lack of a decision can be profound. And I've got a great deal of sympathy with the question in the sense that radical reform, I think, rather than tinkering reform, radical reform in favour of projects which are clearly going to enable and speed up the ability of the economy to grow and connect people together and grow jobs has clearly got to be a cogent argument.